The news on the Korean Peninsula is being described as a diplomatic breakthrough, and it is, for North Korea. It has been the goal of North Korea for decades now to have a high-profile one-on-one summit meeting with the President of the United States. Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, wanted such a meeting with President Clinton. The Clinton administration agreed to send Secretary of State Madeleine Albright to North Korea to begin talks and see if enough progress was made to warrant a presidential summit. Each concluded that there wasn't. The Bush administration, which labeled North Korea part of the axis of evil, was even cooler on high-level talks. The Obama administration achieved breakthroughs with the Cuban and Iranian regimes through high-level contacts, but gave up on diplomacy with the North Korean regime because of its unwillingness to denuclearize. It adopted instead a policy of pressure, and until now, the Trump administration had stuck to that policy and actually escalated it. Earlier this week, Mike Pence said, "Our posture toward the regime will not change until we see credible, verifiable, and concrete steps toward denuclearization." Trump himself previously ridiculed the idea of talks, tweeting, "The U.S. has been talking to North Korea for 25 years. Talking is not the answer." He humiliated his own Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, for his diplomatic efforts, tweeting that Tillerson was wasting his time. So what changed this week? Well, it's not clear. The charitable interpretation would be that the South Korean government received assurances that the North was serious about talks to eliminate its arsenal. Let's be clear. North Korea has announced no concessions, no reversal of its arsenal, no denuclearization, let alone any actions. What appears to have happened is the following. Trump was told that in the talks between North and South, Kim Jong-un expressed a wish to meet with him, and Trump jumped at the opportunity. Henry Kissinger has often said that presidential summits should be the climax of a long negotiating process, not the beginning. Trump's gambit turns that dictum on its head. Victor Cha, once slated to be Trump's own ambassador to South Korea, warns that a presidential summit is dangerous because if it fails, it leaves little room for further diplomacy. The outcome, he says, could actually end up being war. But we should look upon this move with hope and wish the president and the administration well. Yet it does feel like it's part of a pattern. Trump talks tough towards countries like, say, China and Saudi Arabia. They then flatter him, put on parades and banquets, and he quickly reverses course. And in his eagerness to reward flattery, he makes large concessions and gets little in return. The United States has endorsed Saudi policy in Yemen and Qatar with no noticeable reciprocal reward. Trump announced a major concession to Israel, the move to Jerusalem, without even asking for something in return. South Korean President Moon seems to have noticed this pattern. He sought to move events on the Korean Peninsula away from war talk and towards negotiations, essentially the opposite of Trump's declared path. But he took pains to always praise Trump while he charted his contrary course. He did it again this week, giving Trump ample credit for his own opening. All these countries seem to understand how to play Donald Trump. What we need to watch now is whether Donald Trump knows how to play them. And let's get started. Let's keep going with this extraordinary news about North Korea with my terrific panel today. Sue Terry was a senior analyst for the CIA on Korea issues from 2001 to 2008. She is now a senior fellow for Korea at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Ian Bremmer, of course, is the president and founder of the Eurasia Group and the author of a terrific new book, Superpower: Three Choices for America's Role in the World. And Stanley Roth was the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and Pacific Affairs for most of Bill Clinton's second term. In that role, he traveled to Pyongyang in 2000 on that famous trip with Madeleine Albright to meet Kim Jong-il. Those were the highest level meetings ever held between the United States and North Korea. So first, let's just talk about the way this happened, which I still feel is itself unprecedented. Ian Bremmer, have you ever heard about kind of foreign policy initiative which worked out like this?
Nothing even close. We have the South Korean senior foreign policy envoy who's meeting with H.R. McMaster on Thursday, not supposed to meet with Trump until Friday. Trump finds out the meeting's happening, saying, no, I want to do that right now. They meet, they talk. It's clear that the invitation which is offered to Trump is something that President Moon himself of South Korea is not in any way suggesting that Trump should just accept, be cautious, first engage at a lower level. And Trump's like, no, I want to do it. Let's announce it right now. The South Koreans end up making the announcement in the driveway in front of the White House. I mean, on every level, this is unprecedented, and yet on every level, this is par for the course and what we should expect with President Trump.
So normally, presumably, you would have had the president say, let's think about it.
Sure.
Let's convene a National Security Council meeting.
Of course. Even President Moon Jae-in, South Korean president, who's all for engagement and negotiation, said, when offered to meet with Kim Jong-un, he said, if the conditions are right, let me think about this, I'll get back to you. So what President Trump, in a normal situation, would have done is, or should have done, is convene an NSC meeting and talk about pros and cons of having such a summit meeting with Kim Jong-un, and then coordinate the policy and then announce it.
So, Stanley, what's wrong with trying this? I mean, the Trump argument, I suppose, would be, look, we've tried all that kind of thing. Why not do something out of the box?
There's nothing wrong with trying this. I think extraordinary times require extraordinary measures, and in my view, President Trump had no choice. First, this had been clearly orchestrated by President Moon, who had invested enormous political capital and prestige, sending his national security advisor to personally brief the president, carrying the invitation. It would have been a massive insult to President Moon had he not accepted it, and it would have been a massive insult to Kim Jong-un. Furthermore, I think the president, because of the way he runs the White House, does not have the luxury that President Clinton had, where he could send Secretary Albright, Ambassador Sherman, and a very large team. We had 4 assistant secretaries to pave the way for a trip. Is Secretary Tillerson really going to be able to represent the U.S. on North Korea policy after the way the president has publicly treated him 3 times? Is this the right time for National Security Advisor McMaster, reportedly on the way out, to be heading the delegation? You can't have the Secretary of Defense. So really, it is up to President Trump to start it. But remember the key thing, the point that I agree with the White House, and I hope they stick to it, that this is not a negotiation. Negotiation requires endless rounds of preparation and detail. This is a meeting. And if a meeting can start to form the beginnings of a relationship, and I'm not saying friendship, if a meeting can somewhat reduce the tensions, and most importantly, if a meeting can end up with an agreement on a process for negotiations, it is then worth the risk.
But Sumiteri, the North has wanted this meeting for a long time because this is a very repressive regime, and this provides incredible legitimacy to the regime.
Absolutely. North Koreans have sought a meeting with a U.S. leader for many years. I mean, even President Bush was invited, or they wanted to meet with him. It gives North Korea legitimacy, as you said. It normalizes the country. But I have other concerns. It's that Trump might not see this as just a beginning of the negotiation. What if he concludes? What if he agrees to something like, North Koreans say if their regime security is guaranteed, that they might give up nuclear weapons. But what does that mean? That means they want to break up the U.S.-South Korea alliance. That means they want to kick off the U.S. forces of the Korean Peninsula. So I don't have confidence that Mr. Trump is going to start something. What if he decides, hey, this might work? Or at the other end, I think Victor Cha was absolutely right when he said, you have a premature negotiation. What if it falls through? Then there is no recourse after that. You already have met with Kim Jong-un. Now you're going to say, okay, we've used that engagement negotiation card, and now we have no recourse except to take kinetic action on North Korea.
Ian Bremmer, you said to me, you knew this was going to happen in the sense that Trump was going to want to meet with Kim Jong-un. Why?
Because no one else has done it. Kim Jong-un has not met with a single other leader of the world since he's taken power, and no American president has ever met with a North Korean leader, only former Secretary of State. So it's the first. It's incredible television. Clearly, Trump wants to make this happen. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? And there are a lot of things that could, simply the fact of saying there's going to be a summit has now made Trump's presidency more about North Korea than I think any of us want. I mean, the fact is this has been the most intractable geopolitical problem for several administrations now. They've all decided to kick it down the road, even though we know it's getting worse, and they knew it was getting worse, because they worried that opening up that can of worms had the potential to kill an awful lot of people. And the fact that Trump is now making his presidency more about that is, of course, a greater danger for all of us.
But you're saying that just from a pure TV point of view, this is irresistible to the former host of The Apprentice.
Well, and I'll say something else. I think it's irresistible that at some point I believe that Putin is going to make an offer to actually host this thing, because it's irresistible to have the media covering it in this sort of way. They both like that kind of thing. It's going to happen. Doesn't mean that the meeting's going to occur. Doesn't mean the meeting's going to be any good.
But this is all very good for North Korea. North Korea is now, what, 95% of the way to a robust nuclear arsenal with delivery systems,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Now is the time for them to talk. And
No,
try to-
absolutely. North Korea is going to spin this as going into this summit meeting, from a position of strength. They're going to say it's because of our nuclear strength. They are 95% done with their nuclear program. They just have one more technical hurdle that they have to cross, which is to show successful reentry capability. But yeah, South Korea and Japan are already under North Korean nuclear threat. They have between 20 to 60 nuclear warheads. They've already shown ICBM capability, intercontinental ballistic missile, that can reach all of mainland United States. They're very, very close, and they're going to say, hey, we're now coming in from a position of strength.